Hey, it's not too late to get signed copies of any of my books for some last-minute Christmas gifts. Get an autographed copy of Take Back Your Time, The Guilt-Free Guide to Life Balance, Living True, 40 Days to Get Back to You, or my first book, Business Boutique, A Woman's Guide for Making Money Doing What She Loves. Get stocked up on 3 best-selling books on time management, faith, and business, and make 2024 your best year yet, and give a gift that's thoughtful and practical. Get your autographed copies of my books at christywright.com/store. Signed copies are only available at christywright.com/store. Hey everyone, and welcome to Get Your Hopes Up. I'm Christy Wright, and I'm so glad you're here. Romans 15:13 says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by power of the Holy Spirit." Our God is the God of hope, and he wants you to overflow with hope. So let's start our week by getting our hopes up again. Now today, we're talking about what to do when you face something that's discouraging. And we all know that we have these moments. You probably have countless times when, just life throws you a curveball, the rug gets pulled out from beneath you, or something just goes wrong that you don't expect. A few weeks ago, we talked about complaining, and I gave you some examples of how my kids complain and how it drives me crazy. But of course, I realized that I do the same thing. You probably do too. Well, I got to tell you one particular time that my kids complain that drives me insane. Here's the deal. I will be in the kitchen fixing their food. It can be lunch or dinner. It doesn't matter. But in the middle of my preparations, they come in and they stand over me and they look over their plates and over the pots and over the cutting board and all of the work that I'm doing. And they just start complaining, y'all. I don't like this. I don't like that. That's too dark. That's cut in the wrong shape. I don't want that here. Put it over there. I don't want this. I want that instead. I'm sorry. Do you not see that I'm not finished yet? The nerve, the audacity to come in the middle of my work and start peering over me and complaining about what I'm doing. Don't they know that I know what they like? Don't they know that I know what they want and what they don't and what's good for them? Don't they know? The nerve, y'all. The reality is, we do the same thing. We do the same thing. We look at our current circumstances and we don't like how it looks. We don't like what's going on in this exact moment. God, why is this so hard? Why is this job so bad? Why are my kids so crazy? I don't like this. I don't like that. We do the same thing. We pick it apart based on one tiny moment in the story. Because the truth is, when you're in the middle of the story, it's not always good. Think about it. Think about any movie you've ever seen or any book you've ever read. Think about the middle of that movie or the middle of that book. It's not easy. It's not safe. It's not even good. It's suspenseful. It's risky. It's full of conflict. It's full of problems. The couple that was so in love and perfect for each other have to move to separate parts of the world. The company that the man started from scratch in his basement in his 20s goes into bankruptcy. The green grouchy guy steals Christmas and is extremely unhappy with himself and life and is on a mission to make everyone else miserable too. Problems, problems, problems. That is what all good stories are full of, y'all. Problems, conflict, and problems. See, here's our problem. Our problem is that we look at our lives through a snapshot of a moment or a situation or a season, and we make judgments and complaints based on what's going on right now. That's like hitting pause on the movie and saying, this movie is the worst. So one of my favorite authors is Francine Rivers, and she wrote a brilliant best-selling book called Redeeming Love, which if you haven't read it, go ahead and just take off work for an entire week and read it and binge it because you won't sleep, you won't eat. It's absolutely phenomenal. But because I was such a big fan of this book, I also read another series from her, which is called the Mark of the Lion series. And these 3 books together, y'all, are like, 1,500 pages. Like they're huge, huge books, but they're so good. Well, the first book tells this story of this young woman and this love story, and you get so sucked into the story, and it's so good. And in the final pages, she dies. The main character dies. Well, you're devastated, first of all, because you love this character so much, and you're like, how could this happen? But because you're so sucked into the story, you immediately go into book number 2, you begin reading, and you find out, spoiler alert, she doesn't die. Like, she comes back to life. She didn't actually die, and this love story continues, and it's brilliant and beautiful, and it's so good. Well, years ago, I told one of my friends to read this series, this Mark of the Lion series, because it was so good. And so she reads the first book and y'all, she was so mad. She wouldn't read the second book. Like, she really wouldn't read it. I would ask her, like, regularly, like, are you reading it? What do you think? How do you like it? And she got to the end. She was so mad. She would not start the second book. I was like, but you got to start the second book. She's like, no, I'm mad at this author. I was like, what? She's like, I'm mad at her. I can't believe she would let that character die. No, I can't read any more of her books. I was like, no, you just got to read the book. I couldn't tell her, y'all. I couldn't tell her that she comes back to life, because then it's like I've ruined it, right? I was like, no, you got to pick up the second book. She's like, I won't. I'm so mad at that author. Y'all, she wouldn't read the second book. So finally I told her, I was like, she comes back to life. But my friend was so mad at this author that the character died that she wouldn't pick up the second book. And I know this is a weird example, but we kind of do the same thing, y'all. We get mad at God because we don't like how that scene ended. We don't like how that story went. We don't like how that book went or that chapter went, that we don't even want to read the next chapter. We don't want to pick up the second book. But let me tell you, the story isn't over, y'all. The story is not over. We are looking at our lives in this situation, in this circumstance, which, yes, is hard. Yes, is bad. It's suspenseful. It's risky. It's full of conflict and problems. It does not feel good in the moment, okay? Standing at a Red Sea and you don't know how you're going to get through when the Egyptians are closing in is not a fun position to be in. I get it. It's not. I get it. However, conflict and problems and risk and suspense is what all great stories are made of. The story isn't over. Whatever you're going through right now is not the end of the story. We are doing exactly what my kids do, getting in the kitchen and peering over God's work and complaining. But like me and like you, friends, God is not done yet. He's not done with whatever he's working on for you. Get out of the kitchen, stop complaining. He's not done yet. Hey, listen, I know how frustrating it is when you are going through one of those seasons of discouragement. And maybe it's not even a season. Maybe it's just a hard week. Maybe it's just a really bad day. If you're like me, then when you're going through those bad times, it feels like it's always been bad and it always will be bad. But we know that's not the truth. It just feels like it when you're down. But the good news is there are things you can do, practical, tactical things you can do to pull yourself out of the pit and get your hopes up again. That's exactly why I created my free 7-day devotional. 7 days to stop feeling discouraged. There are things we can do to get our hopes up and turn our eyes towards the one who is the author and perfecter of our faith. If you head over to getyourhopesup.com, you can get your free 7-day devotional. That's getyourhopesup.com. I want to give you 5 words. The story is not over. The story is not over. What if Abraham gave up on God because he didn't get a child that first year after the promise was spoken to him? What if David gave up on his future because Saul chased him and tried to kill him for years? What if Mary didn't believe God because she didn't understand how a virgin could get pregnant? We wouldn't have generations as numerous as the stars in the sky. We wouldn't have King David, and we wouldn't have Jesus. Against all odds and all logic and all basis of worthiness at all, God has always trusted his people to trust him that the story isn't over. God has always trusted his people to trust him that the story isn't over. And even though it's hard for us, and even though we are impatient, and even though we get scared of our enemies and our problems, and even though we don't understand how his promise can happen, and even though we're prone to get in the kitchen and complain about his work, and even though we press pause in the middle of the movie and pass judgment on what a terrible story this is, even though we do all of that, God still trusts us to trust him. The story isn't over. He invites us to trust him. He woos us and loves us and cares for us and helps us trust him that the story isn't over. So when you get some news that you never wanted to get, news that takes your breath away and pulls the rug out from under you, unusual test results that need follow-up appointments and specialists that you'd never want to have to see, your biggest client is cutting back and not going to have the budget to work with you next year, your kids are struggling at school and the teachers recommend getting them evaluated for a learning difference or disability. News that sends your brain into fight or flight and makes your chest so tight you can't breathe. Tell yourself these 5 words. The story is not over. The story is not over. The story is not over. You're in the middle of a movie in a tough scene that has you on the edge of your seat, and it's hard and it's scary and it's suspenseful, but friend, it is not over. Your God knows exactly what's going on, and he is not done yet. If it's not good, he's not done. He's working in the kitchen, and you don't like what you see, but remind yourself, will yourself, tell yourself, force yourself to trust him that he knows you. He knows what you can handle and what you can't. He knows what you like and what you don't, what you need and what you don't, where you're going and how you'll get there. He knows all of that and more. He knows every hair on your head and every star in the sky and every desire and fear in your heart. He knows. He knows. And he's not done yet. So step back, take a breath, get out of the kitchen, hit play on the movie, and remind yourself that this is a scene. It's not the final credits, friend. Your God knows. He is good. And I promise you, he's not done yet. Thank you all so much for joining me for my new show, Get Your Hopes Up. I'm so excited to hang out with you every Monday to help you get to know God, get closer to him, and get your hopes up again. Be sure to share this episode on Facebook and Instagram to help other people get their hopes up as well. And then I'll see you next week for another new episode of Get Your Hopes Up.